The Swan Maiden is a mythical creature who shapeshifts from human form to swan form. The key to the transformation is usually a swan skin, or a garment with swan feathers attached. In folktales of this type, the male character spies the maiden, typically by some body of water, then snatches away the feather garment, which prevents her from flying away, or swimming away, or renders her helpless in some other manner, forcing her to become his wife. The folktales usually adhere to the following basic plot. A young, unmarried man steals a magic robe made of swan feathers from a swan maiden who comes to bathe in a body of water, so that she will not fly away, and marries her. Usually she bears his children. When the children are older, they sing a song about where their father has hidden their mother's robe, or one asks why the mother always weeps, and finds the cloak for her, or they otherwise betray the secret. The Swan Maiden immediately gets her robe and disappears to where she came from. Although the children may grieve her, she does not take them with her. If the husband is able to find her again, it is an arduous quest, and often the impossibility is clear enough so that he does not even try. In many versions, although the man is unmarried, or, very rarely, a widower, he is aided by his mother, who hides the maiden's magical garment, or feather cloak. At some point later in the story, the mother is convinced or forced to give back the hidden clothing, and as soon as the Swan Maiden puts it on, she glides towards the skies, which prompts the quest. Romanian folklorist Marcu Biza drew attention to two other introductory episodes. 7 white birds steal the golden apples from a tree in the king's garden, an episode similar to German The Golden Bird, or, alternatively, They Come and Trample the Fields. The hero receives a key and, against his master's wishes, opens a forbidden chamber, where the bird maidens are bathing. In Scandinavian tales, a man's third or only son stands guard on his father's fields at night to discover what has been trampling his father's fields, and sees 3 maidens dancing in a meadow. In Germanic mythology, the character of the Swan Maiden is associated with multiple Valkyries, a trait already observed by Jacob Grimm in his book Deutsche Mythologie, Teutonic Mythology. Like the international legend, their magic swan shirt allows their avian transformation. In Germanic heroic legend, the stories of Wayland the Smith describe him as falling in love with Swanhilda, a swan maiden, who is the daughter of a marriage between a mortal woman and a fairy king, who forbids his wife to ask about his origins. On her asking him, he vanishes. Swanhilda and her sisters are however able to fly as swans. But wounded by a spear, Swanhilda falls to earth and is rescued by the master craftsman Wieland, and marries him, putting aside her wings and her magic ring of power. Wieland's enemies, the Nidings, under Princess Barthilda, steal the ring, kidnap Swanhilda and destroy Wieland's home. When Wieland searches for Swanhilda, they entrap and cripple him. However, he fashions wings for himself and escapes with Swanhilda as the house of the Nidings is destroyed. In the Volsunga saga, King Ignar withholds Brunhild's magical swan shirt, thus forcing her into his service as his enforcer. A third tale with a Valkyrie is the story of Kara and Helgi Haddingjaskati, attested in the Kara Lied. A similarly named character with a swan shift appears in Hromunda saga Greipsina, where she helps her lover Helgi. The second type of tale involves the Swan Maiden helping the hero against an antagonist. It can be the maiden's mistress, a witch, as in a tale published by illustrator Howard Pyle in The Wonder Clock, or the maiden's father, for example, the character of Morskoy Tsar in Russian fairy tales. In this second format, the hero of the tale spies on Swan Maidens bathing and hides the garment of the youngest one, for her to help him reach the kingdom of the villain of the tale. In the Celtic story titled The Tale of the Son of the King of Ireland and the Daughter of the King of the Red Cap, the Prince of Ireland falls in love with the white swan of the smooth neck, also called Sunshine, the young daughter of the King of the Red Cap, as he saw her coming to bathe in a lake. In a Flemish fairy tale, Het Swan Meisje van den Glazenberg, the Swan Maiden of the Glass Mountain, a young hunter fetches the swan garment of a bathing maiden, who asks for it in return. When she wears it, she tells the hunter to find her in the Glass Mountain. After he succeeds in climbing the mountain, the youth recognizes his beloved Swan Maiden and asks her mother for her daughter's hand in marriage. The mother assures the human he will be able to marry her daughter, after doing 3 difficult chores. In an Event tale titled The Grateful Eagle, the hero is promised to an old man after he helped the hero's father close a magical casket. Years later, the hero finds 3 swan maidens bathing in the river and fetches the robe of one of them. She insists the boy returns it and tells him to pay a visit to her village, where the old man also lives. Soon after arriving, he goes to the old man's house and is attended by a pretty maid, later revealed to be the old man's granddaughter. In a Celtic tale, The Farmer's Son Who Came from Rannoch, the farmer's son sees 3 swan maidens bathing in water and hides their clothing, in exchange for the youngest of them to marry him. In the Irish fairy tale The 3 Daughters of the King of the East and the Son of a King in Erin, 3 swan maidens come to bathe in a lake and converse with a king's elder son, who was fishing at the lake. His evil stepmother convinces a young cowherd to stick a magic pin to the prince's clothes to make him fall asleep. The spell works twice, and in both occasions the Swan maidens try to help the prince come to. In another Irish tale, The House in the Lake, a man named Enda helps Princess Maeve, turned into a swan, to break the curse her evil stepmother cast upon her. In another tale, Goddess Ornia, metamorphosed into a swan, was bathing in the lake and was seen by a human duke, Gerald Fitzgerald, who felt a passionate yearning towards her. Aware of the only way to make her his wife, the duke seized Ornia's fairy cloak. Once subdued and deprived of her magic cloak, she resigned to being the human's wife, and bore him a son. In a local legend in the barony of Inchiquin, County Clare, before the O'Briens took the lands of the clan Ifernane, the young chieftain O'Quinn follows a stag to the shore of Loch Inchiquin and sees 5 swans near the water. The 5 swans take off their swan skins and become maidens. O'Quinn steals the garments of one of them, the other turn back into swans and depart, leaving their companion to her fate. The captured swan maiden is wooed by the O'Quinn man, until she concedes to marry him, on 2 conditions: their marriage must be kept a secret and that no man from Clan Brian must be under their roof, lest she disappears and the man becomes the last of his clan. O'Quinn and the swan maiden live 7 happy years of marriage, with 2 children born to them, until a fateful day, O'Quinn meets a member of the O'Brien clan and invites him to his castle. He entertains his guest and gambles against him all his worldly goods and possessions, and loses. Remembering his wife's prediction, O'Quinn goes to her room and sees her back into swan form, with their 2 children metamorphosed into cygnets. The swan mother and her children fly away to the mists of the lake, and are seen no more, thus ending the O'Quinn line. At least 9 accounts of the legend exist. In 3 of them, the supernatural wife is explicitly a swan maiden. In other accounts, the O'Brien of the legend is identified with Tidjahud O'Brien, Prince of Thomond. The number of swans may also vary between tellings, 5, 7 or a general number of them. The swan appears in Welsh tradition, sometimes closely connected to fairies. In this story, a young farmer, working in a field near the sea, sees a swan alighting near a stone. The bird takes off its feathers, becomes a woman, bathes for a while, then returns as a bird to the skies. This goes on for some time, until the farmer decides to hide the swan feathers the next time the woman goes to bathe in the lake. It happens thus and the swan woman begs for her feathers back, but the farmer refuses. They eventually marry and he hides the feather skin in a locked oaken chest. One day, the man forgets to lock his chest. The swan woman gets her feathers back and flies away from their home as a swan. The farmer returns home just in time to see her departure, and dies of a broken heart. In another tale, a man from Roos visits his friend in Cadoxton Yuxta Barry, at Barry Island. Back then, Barry Island was only reachable at low tide. Both friends spend some time together and lose track of time, when the tide has risen high enough to block their return. Both decide to pass by Friar's Point. There, they see 2 swans alighting and becoming 2 women by taking off their swan skins. Both men decide to steal the women's skins. Both women beg for the skins and feathers back, but the men deny their request. The swan women marry each man. The wife of the man from Cadoxton is run over by a wagon and, when people come to pick her corpse, she becomes a swan and flies away. As for the other man, after 7 years of marriage, the man throws away some rubbish in the farmyard, the swan wings among them. The wife finds them, puts them back and flies away as a swan. The swan maiden appears in a tale from the Yao people of China. In a tale from the Kakari, the story of the merchant lad, an orphaned youth decides to earn his living in foreign lands. He buys goods and a boat, and hires some help. He and his crew arrive at another country, where an old couple lived with their pet swan. One day, the youth sees the swan transform into a maiden and becomes enamored. He buys the swan from the old couple in hopes it will become a girl again, but no such luck. The youth pines away with longing and his mother is worried. A wise woman advises the mother and son to prepare a mixture of ashes and oil, procure a yak's tail and to pretend to fall asleep at night. The swan takes off her animal clothing and, as a human, begins to worship her country's gods. The youth awakes, takes the plumage and tosses it in the fire. The maiden faints, but the youth uses the mixture on her and fans her with the yak's tail. She awakes and marries the human, giving birth to many children. The Swan Maiden story is believed to have been the basis for the ballet Swan Lake, in which a young princess, Odette, and her maidens are under the spell of an evil sorcerer, von Rothbart, transforming them into swans by day. By night, they regain their human forms and can only be rescued if a young man swears eternal love and faithfulness to the princess. When Prince Siegfried swears his love for Odette, the spell can be broken, but Siegfried is tricked into declaring his love for von Rothbart's daughter, Odile, disguised by magic as Odette, and all seems lost. But the spell is finally broken when Siegfried and Odette drown themselves in a lake of tears, uniting them in death for all eternity. While the ballet's revival of 1895 depicted the Swan Maidens as mortal women cursed to turn into swans, the original libretto of 1877 depicted them as true Swan Maidens, fairies who could transform into swans at will. Several animated films are based on the ballet. The magical swan also appears in Russian poem The Tale of Tsar Sultan. The son of the titular Tsar Sultan, Prince Gviden, and his mother are cast in the sea in a barrel and wash ashore in a mystical island. There, a princeling grows up in days and becomes a fine hunter. Prince Gviden and his mother begin to settle in the island thanks to the help of a magical swan called Princess Swan, and in the end of the tale she transforms into a princess and marries Prince Gviden. A variant of the Swan Maiden narrative is present in the work of Johann Carl August Musaeus, a predecessor to the Brothers Grimm's endeavor in the early 1800s. The third volume of his Volksmärchen der Deutschen contains the story of Der geraubte Schleier, the stolen veil. Musaeus' tale was translated into English as The Stealing of the Veil, or Tale à la Montgolfier, and into French as Voile en Velay, in Contes de Museaus. In a short summary, an old hermit, who lives near a lake of pristine water, rescues a young Swabian soldier. During a calm evening, the hermit reminisces about an episode of his adventurous youth when he met in Greece a swan maiden, descended from Leda and Zeus themselves. In the setting of the story, the Greco-Roman deities were genies and fairies. The hermit explains the secret of their magical garment and how to trap one of the ladies. History repeats itself as the young soldier sets his sights on a trio of swan maidens who descend from heavens to bathe in the lake. The Swan Maiden is a timeless, magical story that has been passed down through generations, captivating people of all ages with its magical elements and captivating message. It has the power to transport us to a place of wonder and joy, and to remind us of the power of true love and the importance of embracing our unique differences. The Swan Maiden is a reminder that love cannot be forced, or else it will eventually be lost.